Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to The Bunker. It's time for another voicemail. Today's voicemail is from a caller named Cole. Let's listen to what Cole has to say.
Hi, Lloyd. My name is Cole. I live in the United States right now, in Texas. I'm not from here, but I've been living here for a few years. I've been disfellowshipped for roughly a year at this point. I've served as a pioneer and a ministerial servant in my past as a witness, and um, I guess my concern or my question to you is it worth talking to your family, those who still have some sort of contact with you, um, about any of the understanding or the perspectives that you've gained being on the outside? Um, I grew up as a witness. I was raised as a witness my entire life. Both sides of my family, everyone 3 generations back is a witness. And um, I'm the firstborn of the grandchildren of the cousins of the things like that. So there's a lot of pressure put on me to kind of be the hallmark or the example for the rest of the next generation. And I know that me being disfellowshipped a year ago was really damaging, or at least emotionally damaging to my family. Um, my mother in specific is extremely in the organization, and I hate even using the term brainwashed for her because she's such a sweet, good person, but she is fully convinced of the truth, and any of the secular research or any of the things that I've discovered on my own. Anytime I bring it up to her, it's always the same answer, and she continues to have some limited contact with me, um, basically only necessities, and anytime the conversation turns any way towards what she would consider spiritual things, um, it's immediately shut down. Um, at what point do you have to accept that your family members are not going to listen to reason? Um, I've heard the phrase that you can't reason someone out of something they weren't reasoned into, and it's very frustrating because no matter how many logical points or logical fallacies you bring up concerning the organization or secular research, whether it be scientific, archaeological, historical, they don't make an impact because when someone's so hardened in their view, it's impossible to break through. And it's also really hard for my family, I guess, and I'm sure for almost all JW families, to separate Jehovah or God from the organization and be able to realize that a perspective exists outside of what they believe. It's really led to a lot of mental turmoil, and I feel that I'm losing my mind because 25 years of being indoctrinated, it almost, I feel at this point in my life it's never going to go away. There's that little piece of my brain that will always hold on to that indoctrination, and it's always in the back of my mind. I see things that are going on today that really, they scare me, but they also make me realize that these things have gone on for a really long time in human history. And I won't lie to you, it's really difficult to rationalize. I have days where I am 100% convinced that I'm doing all right and that I've made the right decision, um, conscientiously, because it's something that does not fit with my understanding of life. But it's also very hard when you have an entire family that doesn't believe that, or they believe in the truth. And so that when I lost everything, I lost every relationship that I have had for my entire life, and the frustration and the pain that comes from not being able to express or have your opinion heard and at least tried to be understood is very painful. So I guess my question would be, at what point do you just kind of try to shut off those emotions? Do you try to eliminate those? And I apologize for rambling. It's hard to collect all of the different concepts that come up in my mind concerning this, but my main point, I guess, in this voicemail is just at what point do you secede the fact that they are so hardened in their opinion that nothing rational you say can make a difference or even help them to understand you. Also, I just want to tell you thank you for your work. It's been 4 years that I've been listening to you, and it has been very eye-opening, so I appreciate it. You're more than welcome to use this. If not, I understand, but...
And that's where the message cuts off. There is a 5-minute time limit on voicemails, and this one somehow went 56 seconds over. But anyway, that's just technically explaining why there was an abrupt ending there. But Cole, thank you so much for calling in with that message. You have worried me a little bit, I'm going to be honest, because you talk about mental turmoil. You talk about the fact that you're losing your mind, and you say you feel as though you've lost everything. Now, those are things where some guy on YouTube is going to have very limited ability to help you with problems of that severity. So I'm afraid the usual disclaimers apply. You do need to seek out help with your mental health, either with a counsellor or psychologist, or perhaps with a psychiatrist. I do relate, I do sympathise with that feeling of losing everything. Without going into too much detail, people are familiar with my story. It messes with my head that I no longer have contact with my nuclear family that was basically everything to me in my childhood. It messes with my head at times. It's manageable, but it's a weird thing to go through. The good news for you is that you still sound relatively young. And when you are young, I don't want to kind of sound all condescending and, pushing the age card too much. But when you are young and you don't have as much experience with life, things can seem more devastating than they really are, because you haven't yet experienced as much the process of building relationships over time, the risk factor, the fact that you need to make yourself vulnerable. You're going to be let down by people. Others aren't going to let you down. When you're still fairly early on in the process, it can seem more devastating, I would argue, than when you're older and you kind of have a little bit more, I want to say worldly wisdom, but basically you have more experience of living and you understand that things are salvageable. So again, the main piece of advice that I have in this video, the main thing that I want you to walk away with, having listened to my reply, is to seek help with your mental health, because that is not a good place to be. It's not a good place to be in mental turmoil, or feeling as though you're losing your mind, or feeling overwhelming sensations of having lost something. With all of that said, your question, which you've kind of rephrased a few different times, I'm going to try and condense it or paraphrase it. You want to know, is it worth talking to your family And at what point do you shut off emotions, was how you put it. At what point do you accept that they are a lost cause? I don't think you should ever feel as though you need to shut off your emotions. Our emotions are our emotions. If we didn't have emotions, we wouldn't be human, would we? We'd be robots. So you should never feel as though you need to shut off your emotions. It's purely about learning to manage the situation so that the feelings of loss and the feelings of anxiety you describe relating to kind of the doomsday theology that you've been coded with, it's getting to the point where you're in control of those things rather than those things being in control of you. So it's perfectly fine and perfectly normal to feel emotional about the traumatizing experience that you have been through and are going through. Never ever feel guilty for feeling emotional about the fact that you are without loved ones, that your loved ones have turned their back on you and are treating you as though you are dead, essentially, over an ideological difference. It does sound as though your mother is having at least some contact with you. I think that's very positive, considering the fact that you stressed that, you know, she's very heavily indoctrinated. You described having limited contact, but as soon as things get remotely, quote unquote, spiritual, that's when the conversation ends. Well, that's better than what I have with my father, you know. It takes an absolute emergency or something really, really important for me to know that I can speak to him. But it sounds as though you have limited contact where you can speak to your mother so long as it's not talking about religion. And I think that that is a huge bonus. That's something that, if I've understood correctly, you're already well ahead of many people who'll be watching this message who are just completely being shunned by their parents. So seize any positives that you can. That sounds like a positive. In terms of talking to your family or trying to reason with your family or persuade your family, I'm afraid you do sort of need to start from the assumption that they're a lost cause. I think it's really important to manage your expectations in these situations. You're only going to make things worse for yourself if you are living in denial and hold a candle for the possibility of your parents one day waking up and realizing that they're being lied to and manipulated. It's better to start with the assumption that they'll quite frankly go to their graves in this group. Such is the potency of the indoctrination. And then anything that happens is going to be a bonus, isn't it? But truthfully, it's clearly not impossible to reason with people who are in cults. It's just extremely difficult. As I've repeatedly said, it needs to be their journey. It's not something where you can confront them with information and it will be, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. Well, now you come to mention Mexico, Malawi, now you come to mention the covering up of child sexual abuse, now I realize I'm in a cult. It just doesn't happen that way. Jehovah's Witnesses who take their faith seriously don't want there to be reasons for their faith to be wrong. Don't want there to be reasons for them to have wasted years or decades of their lives. So they're going to push back on anything that you say that in any way undermines their faith as they would see it. So please manage your expectations in that regard. Please be grateful for any contact that you have with your mother. Don't try and certainly don't ambush your mother. If your mother makes attempts at salvaging you, or if any, Jehovah's Witnesses that you know or care about interrupt their shunning and speak to you and try to reason you back, well, then you have an opening, I think, to be honest and frank about the reasons why you can't be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. But even then, you need to use lashings of kindness and diplomacy and, if you want the conversation to go anywhere. I think the phrase is, you catch more flies with honey. You're always going to make more headway, more progress in trying to persuade people with firmly entrenched views if you do so with kindness and tact. Street epistemology, I cannot express enough how highly I think of it as a technique when it comes to having these difficult conversations. But yes, more than anything, please pay attention to your mental health, and please manage your expectations, and please be positive and know that you're not alone. There are thousands of us either going through the same thing right now or who have been through a very similar situation not so long ago. We're on your side. There is life outside the cult. It may seem as though you've lost everything, but believe me, there is everything to gain. There are friendships to be forged. There are relationships that can blossom. It's all just waiting there in the future once you put some effort in to reach out and expand your community. So I hope that's helpful for you. If you would like to leave a voicemail, the thing to do is go to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want me to broadcast your message on my channel. But that's all I have time for. Thanks so much for watching.